We might have a few more people joining in as we move along. On my part, let me just say that I was trying hard to end my epic journey with the Four Winds, but yesterday finally I have crossed the storyline where Jack Whalen meets Loretta. So as I listen to all of you, I'll get caught up with the rest of the story, and I will finish the book over time.
Oh,
My mind is, though, still fizzling with all the sadness that has engulfed even the worst drought, imminent disaster, agonizing the people caught in the dust bowl of the 30s. And I think Srinivas has captured it very vividly in his curtain call and in the following narration. So let me hand it over to him and then we'll get going. Go ahead, Srinivas.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. So now you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid lock. I should have made you leave your key. If I'd have known for just 1 second, you'd be back to bother me. Go on now, go. Walk out the door. Just turn around now. 'Cause you're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to hurt me with goodbye? Did you think I'd crumble? Did you think I'd lay down and die? Oh, no, not I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, and I've got all my love to give, and I'll survive. I will survive. I will survive.
Very nice. That was lovely.
I've been sort of fascinated by the greatest generation for a long time. My parents, my grandparents, and the hardships that they had endured. And I found myself wanting to understand sort of the world that they had come from. And that led me to the Great Depression, which, led me to the world of the Four Winds. This book is both a continuation of what I've been doing and kind of a new venture for me. I think that books like The Nightingale and Winter Garden, which came before, really sort of set the stage for me to be able to write a book like this. It's very much, I think, an American epic from a woman's perspective, written by a woman. So it was really interesting for me to be able to go in and talk about how mothers survived, how women survived, because a lot of women were on their own in this time period, taking care of their children. And so I guess it's not a surprise, but what I feel mostly is their strength, their endurance, their resilience. And again, that comes back to the greatest generation. It meant a lot to me to be able to go back to other times and this particular time and see the great resilience of the American spirit and the human spirit. One of the interesting things about this book was how much I fell in love with these characters, particularly Elsa. Elsa, as a young girl and a young woman, came from a very difficult household. And she was very much taught not to dream. And books are a portal to another world. And the book that really sets her on this journey that changes her life is The Age of Innocence. And it sort of opens her to this idea of passion And once that door is open, she finds that it's not as easy to close as she would like. You know, hope is everything. Hope is what allows us to survive times like this. It's what allows us to leave wherever we are and go somewhere else, and to put down roots and to begin again. This hope that we pass down to our children, this hope that we take from our parents and our grandparents, this idea that we can not only survive, that we can thrive, that we can provide, you know, a better life for our children. I think that's what keeps us all going all the time.
Yeah, that was Krishnan Anna.
Yeah,
And
wonderful.
so we have 4 people having a birthday this month. We are having Saga, then Nidhi, Zareen. So unfortunately, I think only Zareen is with us today. But I think best wishes to them.
Happy birthday, happy
How
birthday.
cute. This is too cute.
Oh, happy birthday, birthday, birthday. Happy birthday, birthday, birthday. तो कुलविंदर दा जन्मदिन आया, birthday हाई, happy birthday, birthday, birthday. Happy birthday, birthday. Happy birthday to you, 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 happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Oh, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you.
Oh, Yang, send me this. I'm going to send it to all my Siddharth friends on their birthday, man. I think this is
Happy
brilliant.
birthday. Happy birthday, Zareen, and to all the
Happy
people.
birthday, everyone.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Zareen.
This is too cute.
Okay. So now we move to the book what Ajay suggested. Now he wanted to bring some humor to our things. So he suggested 3 good books. And first time we had a very, very clear winner with more than 60%. It's going to be Born a Crime. And I think Trevor Noah, I think most of you have heard already. So now I think we'll read him. This is a book that we'll be reading in April for May session.
Hey, somebody had also posted Groucho and me on WhatsApp. So those of you who are interested can take a look at that too. But Born a Crime is a great choice.
Can I just clarify? You said read in April, but we are reading the other one, right? With the lady with
okay. Thanks for the correction. I will make the correction. It's a May.
Because I'm almost finished that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I also got a shock, Yanks. I finished the other book.
Oh, guys, you guys, I think, seem to be far ahead of us. I think.
Yeah.
We are on a roll out here. Okay. And actually, I have this book, and Tara was reading parts of it to us. I don't know, in the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah.
The Girl Who Smiled Beads, to Shankar's point, by Clementine Vamaria, is the book to be read in April. So thanks for that correction.
I will make the correction. Yeah.
So as the reader of the month, Ishan has an overview that strikes the right chord, I think, for all the reflections that are to follow. So I won't keep him from providing us the overview. Go ahead, Ishan.
Thanks. Actually, Kristen Hannah gave a better overview. I've even got the same quotes that she has, but I'll go any case. So, set in a century ago in the Dust Bowl of America during the Great Depression, This book contains many lessons for us in the present times. The role of climate changes in agricultural practices, the impact of extreme poverty on life choices and opportunities, the role of hope, the importance of courage and love in overcoming adversity. The book takes us on a 25-year journey of these times, seen through the perspective and struggles of Lisa Martinelli, warrior, daughter, mother, as she finds ways to cope with one adversity after another, leaving the Dust Bowl for a better life in California to face equal hardships there. The book shows courage, hope, kindness, hopelessness, and cruelty, all in equal measure. The othering of people from the same country, migrants in their own land. At the heart of the first part of the book is a relationship between humans and land. To damage the earth is to damage your children. And the relationship of both humans and land to climate, wind, dust, rain. This relationship remains as key today despite human progress. Human disrespect of nature continues, with nature reacting and showing humans who is the boss, with global warming, floods and droughts, earthquakes, cyclones, and forest fires increasing in frequency. Hope is a theme that runs through the book, symbolized by an American penny given to Lisa by her father-in-law and handed over to her daughter, who finally becomes the first person in the family at 18 to actually go to college in California. A completely different experience from her previous life in California as a desperate outsider and Okie for Oklahoma, doing whatever it took to survive, including robbery, at a time when cruelty by the haves to the have-nots in California seemed normal. Kindness is also a theme that reverberates in the book. The kindness shown by Lisa's in-laws to her, by Jean and Jeb, who are worse off than Lisa in California camps, by Jack, a union worker who falls in love with Lisa and makes her feel good about herself towards the end of the book. Courage is another theme, obviously defined by Lisa throughout the book, but also displayed by her family, Jack, and others in the same situation. Courage is a lie, just a fear that you ignore from the book really makes one think. And above all, love. A mother determined to fight to protect those she loves at all costs. Another line from the book, a warrior never gives up. A warrior fights for those weaker than herself. Sounds like motherhood to me. So many lessons to learn, so many truths to think about and ponder. I will stop here as the reflectors go deeper into these lessons and truths and their relevance to us in these current times. I have to say, I knew about it from a financial perspective, but the Dust Bowl hardships was a revelation to me. And I found the book fascinating in terms of telling me about a part of America that I don't really know. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ishan. That overview, as I said, is great for the themes that were outlined. And we'll see that these themes will unfold very effectively with each successive reflector today. Sharath is going to be virtually here, providing quite a scholarly reflection, as you will hear, on farming practices during the 1930s in the context of the book, as well as in keeping with climate change as we see it today. He will be followed by Maurice, Ravi, and Kumud in that order, and I'll introduce each one of them as they come up together with their themes for thoughtful reflection. So let's begin with Sharath and farming practices.
The devastating impact of the double whammy of the Depression and the Dust Bowl has been captured vividly through the traumatic experiences of Elsa and her family, whose husband deserts her in desperation and her child's sickness leaves her no option but to take to the road and migrate to California. The government, which tries to explain to the farmers that they need to change their farming techniques, thereby implying that they were in some way responsible for the catastrophe, is treated with suspicion and painted as a villain. The farmers in the book are unwilling to accept that their farming practices over the years could have contributed to the grim outcomes leading to the Dust Bowl, and the evisceration of their communities. The book's focus is on the travails and tribulations of Elsa and the horrific conditions that she and the children are forced to live in following the onslaught of the natural disasters. Disturbing the delicate balance in nature always has consequences, as we are now discovering to our dismay with greater awareness in the 21st century. This was not so evident back then, and this is a classic case of the law of unintended consequences, as the root cause can be traced back to the US's Homestead Act of 1862, which granted settlers up to 160 acres of frontier land if the settler cultivated it, and this was readily seized upon by the farmers who had migrated from Europe and were finding it difficult to get by in the increasingly crowded East. More than 500,000 families migrated to the West to settle the prairie plains. Early in the 20th century, the Great Plains, including the Texas Panhandle, became one of the world's leading wheat-producing regions. The First World War raised the demand for wheat, and between 1914 and 1917, the area of wheat planted increased significantly, and much of which, more than 40%, had never been plowed before. After the war, the trend continued with even greater mechanization, and by 1930, there were almost 3 times as many acres in wheat production as there had been a decade earlier. The plowing exposed the land to rain, wind, and sun, and whereas strong winds and extended droughts had not disturbed the land when the grasses covered it, by 1932, the scene had been set for the earth on the plains to be blown away, and when the drought came in, it was quite literally the perfect storm. In 1934, drought, high winds, and the stripped land combined to create the disaster we know as the Dust Bowl. According to researchers, the agricultural conditions which led to the Dust Bowl are now more than twice as likely to recur because of climate breakdown. Such conditions could be expected to occur naturally only rarely, about once a century. But with rising concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, Dust Bowl conditions are likely to become more frequent events. They are now at least 2.5 times more likely to occur, with a frequency probability of about 1 in 40 years, according to projections by an international group of scientists. If we rewind 1,000 years, it is estimated that only 4 million square kilometers, less than 4% of the world's ice-free and non-barren land area, or habitable land, was used for farming. This has changed significantly today, and 50% of all habitable land is now used for agriculture. Equally significant is the distribution of land use between livestock and crops for human consumption. The combination of pastures used for grazing and land used for farming crops for animal feed account for 77% of global farming land. The additional point for us to consider is that this 77% of the land used to support livestock produces only 18% of the world's calories and 37% of total protein. The world would be better off if we all became vegetarians. The expansion of agriculture has been one of humanity's largest impacts on the environment. Besides the increasing land use and squeezing out of forests, agriculture is a crucial driver of climate change, contributing to around 25% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. This is in addition to the pressure on the world's scarce fresh water required by agriculture in large quantities, 70% of global fresh water, which ends up in rivers, lakes, and oceans as runoffs filled with nutrients, fertilizers, and so on. Natural habitats for a large number of species have been wiped out or threatened by the conversion of land and forests to agricultural use. But we also know that we can reduce these impacts both through the dietary changes, substituting meat with plant-based alternatives, and through technological advances. Crop yields have increased significantly in recent decades. Globally, we need only 30% of the farmland to produce the same amount of crops, excluding those used for livestock, as in 1961. The world is moving in the right direction by using the land better, but in absolute terms, the land being acquired for agriculture is still rising to meet the increasing demand for agricultural production. It is not all doom and gloom, as according to statistics, global agricultural land has peaked in the early 2000s, while agricultural production has continued to increase strongly. However, just to be clear, global agricultural land has peaked, but cropland has not, implying that global pasture has peaked. Given agriculture's deep connections to the world economy, human society, and biodiversity, it is imperative that we put in a concerted effort to farm sustainably to help prevent the looming ecological calamity. Unlike intensive agriculture, sustainable farming has a great potential for benefiting the environment and preserving natural resources. Sustainable agriculture has a positive impact on the environment by decreasing emissions of air pollutants and greenhouse gases, naturally maintaining soil fertility by recycling nutrients, conserving water, and preventing pollution of water bodies, plus reducing agriculture runoff. The list of sustainable farming practices is extensive, and the choice of activities depend on the crop type and farm specifics. Some examples that have already had a significant impact and related to the issues that we have seen in the book are crop rotation, which reduces soil depletion, and by sowing cover crops off-season, farmers protect the fields from soil erosion, plus reduced or no-till practices prevent soil loss due to wind and water erosion. In conclusion, agriculture is one of the biggest frontiers in the battle for protecting our environment, and we cannot continue farming the way we have done in the past because of diminishing land, water, and other resources. We have to continue meeting the demands and the needs of the present without compromising the future, and therefore, it is vitally important that food is produced in a sustainable way that protects our natural resources instead of depleting them.
Great.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, when Ishan handed over this theme to Sharath, he had said Sharath would definitely do a good job with it, and that's what we just heard.
Nan used to call him maturity. So this is reflecting here with all the analysis and his consulting background and Big Four background. But this required this also, Milind. So he was the right person for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now we have very exciting debut reflections from both Marise and Ravi. And first, Marise develops an interesting perspective on how poverty gets highlighted in the novel and whether it is pivotal for what Elsa and her family go through in the epic battle they have fought, one calamity after another. So Marise, with that, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. Brings back memories to see that picture. Yes. Was never quite that well dressed in those days, but what the heck. So I was asked to comment on the impact of poverty on life choices in the context of the book and by consequence for today's world. And while poverty is a significant factor in Elsa's story, it is love and lack of love that drive the choices she makes in the 15 years that we follow her life. Lack of love and affection from her family as a young girl makes her feel less than her dreams and leads her at 26 years to stitch a red silk dress and spend the night in the arms of a man she has met for the very first time. A few more stolen nights, and she eventually becomes pregnant with his child. Because of Rosa's promise that she will love Elsa's child, Elsa chooses to stay with the Martinellis. If you remember, she was walking away from Rafe. She was walking away from her family and her unborn child's father. And she turns around and agrees to stay and face a life she's neither accustomed to nor understands, rather than bring her child into a world in which she is not loved. But Lisa telling her that, yes, I will love your child is what makes her stay. Despite the poverty in the Dust Bowl, Elsa chooses to stay in Texas till dust pneumonia puts her son Ant's life at risk. And she then makes the move to California. It's ironic that this choice saves Ant's life, but ends her own. Once in California, Elsa absorbs the blows of discrimination, climate, and an economic system that keeps her in debt. While she understands and hates the poverty she is trapped in, it is love for her friend Jean that finally triggers her anger, and she chooses to pick up a baseball bat bat and hit back when refused aspirin at the nurse's desk at the hospital. She chooses to be brave when asked by the man she loves to speak to the other workers and ask them to strike. This will be the last choice that she makes. So poverty is the context that clarifies what Elsa truly values. She says to us, love is everything. The rest is just decoration. This is the real role that poverty plays in the choices Elsa makes. It clears away the clouds that can occur because of material things and status and brings forward what is important. We see instances where wealth and status were more a barrier to love and generosity rather than an enabler. Mrs. Walcott's constrained love for her spinster daughter, who was unable to add to the family status, versus Mrs. Martinelli's appreciation and love for the girl who worked beside her, became her daughter, and who she encouraged to do what she had to do. We also see Elsa and Jean's sharing of what little they had versus the 40 cents that Elsa received begrudgingly from the lady of the grand house she cleaned on the first day she got work in California. It begs the question of, is it easier to appreciate and share when you have little than when you have more? The framework for the four winds exists in today's world. We see similar discrimination against outsiders. Mother Nature warning us we need to change our ways, and an economic system that has some people working 3 jobs to feed their family. During COVID, many well-heeled people laughed about the $1,400 government relief being given to everyone in the US, saying it was a misuse of their taxpayer money, as people would use it to take a vacation or buy a luxury item. This was true for many families, but the reality for some families was quite different. Workers who stayed home during coronavirus were considered lazy. The Okies were considered lazy too. The Four Winds takes us deep into the lives of Okies and invites us to hear the stories of other outsiders we see around us today and ask ourselves what we truly value and what are we contributing to the story of our times.
Very nice.
Very, very good. Maurice, I really love the juxtaposition of poverty and how it can really come in the way of or motivate lots of love. Thank you for that reflection, Maurice. So following that is Ravi, and he's going to focus his reflection on bravery and its significance during the epic journey that we all joined while reading The Four Winds. It highlights, I think, an important facet for strong womanhood. So go ahead, Ravi.
Thank you, Miran. Just by way of context, I thought I'd just pick up a few points that Yangs played from the Kristen Hanna interview at the beginning. And I think, as she says, her motivation to write this book was to pay tribute to her parents' and grandparents' generation for their tenacity in the face of great adversity. The second aspect of her motivation was she wanted to tell this story, an epic story, from a woman's point of view. And Elsa's sort of words right in the prologue set the tone. She says, it was always about the men. They seemed to think that it meant nothing to cook and clean and bear children and tend gardens. But we, the women of the Great Plains, worked from sunup to sundown too, toiled on wheat farms until we were as dry and baked as the land we loved. I think in another interview, sort of Hannah also states that she pivoted a lot and rewrote large parts of the book to make Elsa the main protagonist. And I think what she says motivated her was that the arc of a woman feeling that she is worthless and being told that she is worthless and being uneducated and becoming a woman then who can stand up and fight for the rights of people who are not just her own children was such a powerful statement about female growth. So that was a sort of context. If we go now to the next slide, Yangs, just take a look at sort of what the adversity was we were facing in this sort of saga before we come to the role of courage. I think again, sorry, we can just stay on that previous slide. Thank you. And so I think Hannah also speaks about her, how moved she was by the photographs of a photojournalist called Dorothea Langer. And the photograph at the bottom is probably the most iconic photograph of those times. It's titled The Migrant Mother. It's about a woman who was a migrant and is framed by her 2 kids. But right on top is one picture about the Dust Bowl calamity, which probably is not so easy to dramatize in words. But as the drought grinds on, Hannah makes the sheer terror of it come alive. Ordeals that last for days, transforming the landscape, burying homes, filling lungs with sand. Faced with the possibility of starvation, Elsa has to decide whether she is going to stay or head off to California. She finally decides to leave only when her son falls ill. And as Marie says, staying on there could put his life in danger. So Elsa, with her 2 children, embarks on a scary journey to California. However, in the San Joaquin Valley, the family trades one set of horrific conditions for another. Work is scarce. Locals are cruelly suspicious of outsiders who they believe carry disease. Nobody will rent to the Okies as all migrants are known. And the family has to settle in a very squalid camp on the banks of an irrigation ditch. How Elsa overcomes these adversities and manages not just to survive, but continue to fiercely protect her children and keep the hope alive of them having a better life through education, of a deep compassion and friendship with Jean Dewey, and finally finding her voice and love with John Vallon is a story, I think, of great grit, resilience, and courage. Next slide, please. Which then brings us nicely to sort of the role of courage, or the link of courage with adversity. And I know sometimes life can bring us to a point where we have the potential to move from I can't to I can. But how do you actually do it? In fact, Elsa asks herself in the book, how do you actually do that? Overcome fear in practical terms. One trigger the book suggests, and I think Marie's picked this up, is about love. Or more completely, when something you love is threatened so dearly and in such an unfair manner that you get both afraid and angry. As Elsa muses towards the end of her book, love is what remains when everything else is gone. That is what I should have told my children when I left Texas. And this love gives me the courage for what I need today. Elsa had a great love for the land that she belonged to, or felt she belonged to, and she had to leave that only when her son's life, who she loved even more dearly, was at risk. Elsa gathers the courage to storm into a hospital and sort of take aspirin by force when her dear friend Jean's life is in danger and no one else is prepared to help her. Loretta decides to steal money down the barrel of a gun when she wants desperately for her mother, who she loves so dearly, to be buried back on the land she came from. But even when one has great love and when one is afraid and angry, how one reacts when one is afraid is also about character. And a key insight for me came towards Elsa's writing in a journal towards the end of the book, and she says, it has taken decades, but she, Elsa, finally knew what her grandfather meant when he told her the things he told her. It wasn't the fear that mattered in your life. It was the choices you made when you were afraid. You were brave in spite of your fear. You were brave because of your fear, not in spite of it. So it's all about the choices we make when we're afraid, to run away like Rafa, or to take on seemingly insurmountable odds like Elsa did to protect the ones we love. Last slide, please. And finally, I think the question, how relevant is this for today? I think what is truly remarkable is that Hannah's historical saga about environmental disaster coupled with a financial one gets released as in February 2021, when we were in the midst of the global pandemic. The parallels were clearly striking. People losing their jobs, having no food, having to migrate away from their homes and lands, very afraid of disease, uncertainty about the future. I think it also widened the partisan divide between the haves and the have-nots. And like back then, it was the courage of a few with love and compassion and character that made all the difference. We call them our frontline warriors, and Elsa refers to herself as a warrior, and she writes as sort of, Marie has also picked up, a warrior believes in an end that she can fight for, but she can never see. A warrior never gives up. The other remarkable parallel for me was a story about the store on the Welty farm that enticed the vulnerable into taking on credit they couldn't afford so that they forever get enslaved into the system. And some readers might find a parallel to today how the system exploits the vulnerable to take on expensive credit card or money lender debt. In fact, probably a sign of the difficult times we live in. There's so many companies recently that have taken courage as a core value in their companies. And maybe Anjali can talk about this in the open system. What I was struck about was there was a lady called Wendy Silver who spent most of her life in HR. And talking about HR beyond the workplace, she writes, fear is a powerful thing. It can make us do things we might not otherwise do. And it can make us not do the things we should be doing. We all have fears of some kind or another. How we deal with them and what is most important is really what defines us. And there are three common sort of aspects of fear or courage in the workplace. Courage to try something that you haven't done before, to trust your colleagues, and the courage of voice, to tell the truth no matter how hard it may be for others to hear. But I think the most important lesson, as Hannah says herself, is that history has shown us that it can be a source of great strength because of the durability of the human spirit. We realize we overcome such adversity before and can do it again. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I think you showed very powerfully how history repeats itself towards the end of your reflection. And I love the quotes from Martin Luther King and from Elsa's grandfather and your last quote from an HR manager. Wonderful. So I thank both Maurice and Ravi for really very good debut reflections. And finally, we directly have the role of love in the novel that Kumud provides a deeper perspective on. And once again, like Sharath, she's going to do it virtually.
Hello everyone, as Gautam and I are traveling, this is an audio recording of my reflection on The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. My review centers on the role of love in overcoming adversity in the context of the book and by consequence for the world. So here goes. This is a well-researched historical fiction book that is set during the Great Depression era in the US, specifically in the early 1930s. The events in the book take place primarily in the Texas Panhandle, an area that was particularly hard hit by economic and environmental challenges, including droughts, dust storms, and crop failures. The novel explores several themes, including the role of love in overcoming adversity, through the story of Elsa, the protagonist, and her relationships with her family and community, who are struggling to survive during the difficult times of the Dust Bowl era in Texas. Elsa Walcott Martinelli is introduced to the reader as a 25-year-old girl who is rejected by her family because of her childhood illness, plain looks, and tall, gangly figure. She spends most of her time in isolation, disappearing into the world of books, dreaming of an alternative life which is happy and settled. The lack of love and affection from her family has a profound impact on her character leaving her with low self-esteem and a poor self-image. Unmarried at her age and seeing a bleak future for herself, she despairs she would never know a man's love, have her own home, or hold her own child. Thus, when she is befriended by an 18-year-old Italian boy, Rafe Martinelli, who asks if he can kiss her and love her, she consents. This rare act of defiance against societal norms and expectations of women during the Great Depression era provides us with a glimpse of Elsa's character, one of independence and willingness to take risks. It is also a moment of self-discovery for Elsa. She knew now what she hadn't known before, hadn't even suspected. She would do anything, suffer anything to be loved, even if it was just for a. When Elsa's brief interlude with Rafe results in her becoming pregnant, her family disowns her. She's taken in by Rafe's parents, Tony and Rose Martinelli, and she gets married to him. Becoming a part of this family, Elsa discovers a sense of belonging and connection that she has never experienced before. She discovers what her family's love can truly be like. Tony and Rose come to view Elsa as their own daughter, and they teach her to be strong, capable, and independent. Thus, nurtured by a caring family, Elsa grows as a person, finding within herself a nearly bottomless capacity for love. She works hard on the farm, finding an unexpected strength in herself and the realization that she was not a quitter. When she gives birth to her daughter Lorida, love fills her to the brim, and she decides that from now on, all her choices would be made for the child. By 1934, she also has a son, Anthony. By then, years of drought, combined with the economic ravages of the Great Depression, have begun to take their toll on her family, and they struggle to survive. When her husband leaves her and the children, Elsa is devastated, but she doesn't give up. She has developed by now an inner strength and resilience that allows her to persevere through difficult times. However, when her son falls ill with dust pneumonia, her fierce love for her children drives her to make a tough decision, which is to leave the familiarity of the farm and go to California, the land of milk and honey, to seek a better life for her children. In California, we witness Elsa facing many more challenges, including poverty, discrimination, exploitation, and the loss of loved ones. Through it all, Elsa's love for her family and her determination to survive never wavers. She works tirelessly to keep her family together and to provide for them, even when it means sacrificing her own health and well-being. In the midst of the struggles, Elsa develops a kinship with fellow migrants and especially a close friendship with Jean in the Ditch Bank camp where she briefly stays with her children. Her ring of protection encircles Jean's family too, with whom she shares her meager supplies of food, clothing, and even money. This book showcases the resilience of human beings in facing harsh challenges built on a strong foundation of love, commitment, and compassion. For me, some of the key takeaways from the book about the power of love in overcoming adversity are as follows. Number one, love can provide the strength to endure hardships and foster resilience. Throughout the book, Elsa faces numerous challenges and tragedies, from the Dust Bowl to personal loss. However, the love she has for her family, particularly her children, provides her with the strength to keep going and persevere through difficult times. Number two, love can inspire sacrifice and selflessness. Elsa's love for her children is so great that she is willing to make sacrifices and endure hardships to ensure their survival. This is evident when she leaves her home and everything she knows to embark on a dangerous journey to California during the Dust Bowl. Number three, love can create a sense of community and belonging. In California, Elsa meets other migrant workers who have also fled their homes in search of a better life. Despite their differences, they come together and form a community based on mutual respect and support. This sense of community helps Elsa and her family to feel less alone and provides them with a sense of belonging. Number four, love can inspire collective action. Elsa and other migrant workers come together to demand fair wages and better working conditions from their exploitative employer at Welty Farms. Their shared love for their families and their desire for a better life motivates them to take collective action. But perhaps the most profound message in this book is that love can heal emotional wounds. Throughout the book, Elsa struggles with feelings of inadequacy and guilt, particularly when it comes to her relationship with her daughter Lorida. However, as she learns to love and accept herself, she also learns to love and accept her daughter, thus helping to repair their relationship. It is fitting that towards the end of the book, Elsa finds true love with Jack, an activist working for the migrant workers' rights. It is this love and her love for her family and community that gives her the courage to take over the microphone and inspire the strikers. Even though this moment of courage costs Elsa her life, she dies surrounded by her loved ones, happy and proud of the futures they have ahead of them. If there is one quote in this book that sums up Elsa and her love for her family, it is this: "Love is what remains when everything else is gone." Though somewhat saddened by Elsa's death, I felt she didn't deserve this. I loved the story. It is impactful, devastating, and at the same time full of heart. Its strong message of hope, resilience, and love is timeless and relevant in today's world, whether it be for overcoming personal obstacles or advocating for collective action and social movements aimed at promoting equity and justice. I also felt that there is an important message to the world at large about the urgent need to focus on environmental sustainability. The consequences of the ecological disaster during the Dust Bowl era teach us that human activity can have devastating consequences on the environment, and that it's important to prioritize sustainability, environmental regulations, conservation, collaboration, and adaptation to mitigate such impacts. It's a wake-up call. Thank you.
I found in Kumud's reflection very powerful representation of love from the point of view of a very strong woman, Elsa, in this novel. And I must make a note how remarkable this matching of the voice and the text has been for both Sharath and Kumud, because Srinivas put in the effort to take two audio clips which were independent of the text and marry them so seamlessly with the text.
Wow.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks, Milind.
Yeah.
Next time we'll have Chat GPT, will just generate it.
Yeah, you want to get rid of me, I know.
No, nothing can match what we can do, especially Srinivas. So,
I mean, that happy birthday video, great. That is pure genius.
There's a bridge between yesterday and today, and between these very powerful reflections and the open session, here are a few thoughts. To say the very least, I think it's risky when contemporary authors try to update classical literature. Fortunately for me, I have not read The Grapes of Wrath or Wrath, however you say it, by John Steinbeck. While his classic on this American Dust Bowl of the 30s did become a bit controversial during his time, its place in American classical literature is secured well. Kristin Hannah's novel straddles the difficult distance between the Dust Bowl of the 30s and contemporary challenges with climate change. Just as another example of how bad those times were, in April 1935, I was really shocked to note that almost 90 years ago to the day, the noonday sun in Boston, Washington, D.C., and New York was blackened out by dust that originated in Montana. That distance is a little over 2,000 miles. Let's move to present times. Whether we agree on all aspects of his teachings or not, the tenacity and sincerity of Sadhguru's 100-day journey, for example, via 26 countries from the UK to India, just to save the soil, is difficult to question. It also highlights the urgency with which we need to move if the next couple of generations are to not only survive, but also grow on this planet. So at this point, the question uppermost in my mind is, what else do we do to help avert another rising dust bowl calamitously growing on our planet? So that should motivate us to begin our open discussion. Thank you. So it's open for all discussion. So whoever wants to go, feel free to begin.
I think Anjali can start with her shoulder injury.
That's a really good cold call. I actually was astounded at the parallels with today's climate change and the book and how it is all man-made. You know, the very fact that something like this had occurred 90 years ago, and people are still saying that climate change is, a fiction. It was amazing to me. I had not realized how devastating the Dust Bowl and how man-made it was. So really, that's the one thing that I've taken away. And that is something that, really fascinated me in this book. I have read The Grapes of Wrath, but I don't remember it at all. I think in some ways, this book is more contemporary and easier to read.
Okay, Rama wants to ask a question.
In fact, I think she deliberately wrote it as a contrast to Grapes of Wrath, because Grapes of Wrath is from the man's viewpoint. And this is, the central characters here are all women. And I'm pretty sure that's what's happening in schools and contemporary literature classes around the world, that to kind of have that discussion, right, between the two different viewpoints.
In fact, to extend this woman's viewpoint, the book that we'll be reading this month, The Girl Who Smiled Beads, is also another very good book that Kumud, as Reader of the Month, has recommended. So this perspective continues.
Yeah, last night I started crying actually while reading the book. It was like it's really quite intense,
Absolutely. And I think, this idea of the 30s Great Depression was a very sort of separated from the human condition kind of description. But this book brought very vividly for me and opened my eyes to what misery it meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, can I go ahead?
Yeah, Rama, go ahead.
One of the themes that I thought we probably didn't touch on was the plight and the